In the misty hills of Scotland, a true pioneer of spirit and strength is born. Patrick Denmark's fate is forged in war. His story is one of survival against impossible odds, the deaths of his fellow soldiers. Patrick's spirit remains unbroken. Witness an extraordinary tale of human endurance that will leave you questioning how far you would go to survive. Subscribe now to uncover more extraordinary stories of survival and courage. Once upon a time in the misty hills of Scotland, around the year 1635, a young man named Patrick Denmark was born. His family loved their land, their traditions, and their proud clan roots in Scotland. Little did Patrick know that his life would take a path filled with adventure, hardship, and courage far beyond the Scottish hills. As Patrick grew, the world around him was changing rapidly. Civil war was tearing England and Scotland apart. A fierce struggle between those who wanted to keep the king on his throne and those who believed in a different way. Scotland, loyal to the monarchy, joined the fight. Patrick, like many young men of his time, was drawn into the chaos and fought bravely in the Battle of Dunbar in September 1650. But the battle was quick and brutal. Oliver Cromwell's forces, and in less than an hour, the Scots were defeated. Patrick, young and untried, survived the chaos but was captured among thousands of prisoners. Patrick's journey was about to become even more harrowing. The once proud Scottish soldiers were now hungry and had been stripped of weapons. The boys and men began their 90-mile march on a cold September 4th morning, marching in a long ribbon down the muddy roads. Their bodies and spirits battered by hunger, sickness. Some suffered wounds and could barely walk. Some stragglers were killed as an example of what would happen to anyone who lagged behind. The guards were brutal along the way. It took 6 days to march from Dunbar to the Durham Cathedral. He saw his friends and comrades fall daily. Some died from their wounds, others from disease, and many from exhaustion. After being captured and with no food available, many of the Scots resorted to eating raw cabbages from the fields along the way, where they would be held imprisoned. Many got sick from eating the cabbage raw. Cases of the flux or dysentery increased daily. When they finally arrived, after a 6 days march to the Durham Cathedral, their suffering continued. The Grand Cathedral, once a place of worship, had become a prison and a massive grave site. From what is told is that tons of supplies had been coming in from Newcastle, and 60 towns and places in the Durham area were being stolen by the cathedral guards. Some of the food was sold to the prisoners for whatever money or personal jewelry they had managed to retain. Most of the prisoners' rations went at cut-rate prices to merchants and grocers in the area. There is general agreement among British historians that Sir Arthur Haselrig, who was the parliamentarian commander in Newcastle and governor of the northern counties, was put in charge of the thousands of Scottish prisoners of war captured at Dunbar. According to his writings of the times, he did his best for the prisoners, but had no real idea of what the conditions of the situation actually were. The harsh reality is that very little of the food ever found its way into Scottish stomachs. Notwithstanding all of this, many of them died, and few of any other disease than the flux. A perplexed Haselrig wrote,
"Some were killed by themselves, for they were exceedingly cruel towards the other. If any man was perceived to have any money, he was killed before morning and robbed. If any had good clothes that any prisoner wanted, he would strangle the other and put on his clothes. They were so unruly, sluttish, and nasty that it's hard to believe. They acted like beasts rather than men."
It's no wonder. The prisoners were dying at an average rate of 30 a day in the cathedral. That rate probably hit 100 or more daily by the middle of October, as starvation and murder set in and the dysentery infection rate peaked. It is amazing that young Patrick had survived, because the majority didn't. Patrick was young and strong. By the end of October 1650, approximately 1,600 Scots had died horrible deaths in Durham's much-revered House of God. Only 1,400 of the 5,100 men who started the march from Dunbar in September were still alive less than 2 months later, when England's traders in human flesh came calling. These other men with him were his friends for life. His luck changed on November 4th, 1650. After 2 months as a prisoner of war, he was one of 147 chosen Scots that were apparently in good enough health and was chosen to be sent to the English colony across the Atlantic Ocean. This was a common event that was done to prevent the former Scots from rejoining any fight against the English. Against all odds, he had survived the march, the Durham Cathedral. Now he is facing another challenge. When the chosen Scottish prisoners were marched from the cathedral to the docks, they were boarded onto the ships. Patrick found himself aboard a ship called Unity. He was prisoner number 17. They were soon bound for America aboard this small, overcrowded ship, locked down below deck. Patrick arrived in Charlestown, Massachusetts in December 1650 and was sold into indentured servitude for 10 to 20 pounds to the owners of the Saugus Iron Works. An example of that amount of money in comparison, an ox in the late 16th to 17th century might have cost around 5 pounds. Other former prisoners were distributed to sawmills in southern Maine and New Hampshire. Some were sold to local farmers and merchants. While he was at Saugus, he was forced into providing labor, working at the foundry where they made ironware. He was indentured there for a period of 7 years, working for the Puritans that ran the foundry. This is where Patrick learned about the Puritan people and the strictness of their religious beliefs. A much different way of life compared to where he was born and raised. It was a new and foreign world that he couldn't have ever imagined existed coming from the Scottish hills of his youth. Over that 7-year period, Patrick worked hard to pay back the price of what his owners had paid for him. He had finally earned his freedom. Upon his release from servitude, was given 7 pounds. Now a freed man, he worked at odd jobs trying to build a new life for himself and to regain his sense of self-worth. Never again would he be owned by another man. Patrick moved from job to job, finding work where he could from 1658 to 1662. This took him to where he is found on the tax records, living near Dover, Massachusetts. He lived mostly in the general Piscataquis River area, the recognized boundary between New Hampshire and Maine. There, he settled and started a family. Patrick married Anne of York Carter, Denmark, and they had 2 children, Patrick Jr., who was born April 6, 1664. His brother James Denmark was born on March 13, 1666. During this time, the Puritans of Massachusetts had started claiming New Hampshire and Maine as their territory, all 40,000 square miles. They also claimed their Old Testament law was absolute. The Scots of Oyster River and many other people in the settlements weren't having it, having just left that area where Patrick had been in servitude at Saugus Iron Works. The future, events of Puritan tyrannical rule will affect both Patrick and Anne Carter Denmark again. On June 20th, 1666, Anne Carter Denmark was arrested and taken to court and charged under the Cart and Whip Act of 1662. She was arrested for fighting, scuffling, and drawing blood against Elizabeth Pittman and her sister Anne Williams over the last Christmas time several months prior. Revenge had ignited a powder keg in the quiet Puritan town when Elizabeth Williams, now the wife of the town's wealthiest man and successful businessman, Mr. William Pittman, unleashed a vengeful arrest warrant upon Anne Denmark. Months earlier, the scandalous public brawl between Anne Denmark, Elizabeth Williams, and her sister Anne, who were both already notorious for illicit romps, had apparently been fueled and started by Anne Denmark when she made a cutting reply back towards the 2 sisters after being made fun of because of her dress as she walked past them in front of the tavern. It's probable that Anne was in the right to defend herself and her good name against them. That, of course, ensued into a brawl where Anne drew blood. Keep in mind, Anne Denmark was married to Patrick, a veteran soldier, a prisoner at Durham Cathedral, a survivor of a transatlantic crossing in the holds of a ship, sold at an indentured persons market, and then worked at an iron forge for 7 years, earning his freedom. She was a product of her times and tough. On June 20th, 1666, when the constable and his deputy arrived to apprehend Anne, now months later, she met them with fierce resistance, igniting a wild struggle that further solidified her defiance in the eyes of the unforgiving Puritan law. 2 other charges against Anne were made for attack against the body of Constable Philip Chesley and his deputy. To no avail, Patrick and Anne had known Philip Chesley from when they had lived in Dover, who had moved to Oyster River around 1650 himself, but it made no difference. Philip at the time held other various civic positions in Oyster River, including constable, and the new Puritan laws of the lands had become harsh. In court it was proved, owned, and confessed by her of the crimes that she had committed. But Anne stood by her actions against 2 local sisters in court. The court ordered punishment that she be taken by cart to a public place and spend 1 hour in stocks. She is to have a sign around her neck of her crimes pinned to her dress. She was to be whipped to the number of 5 strips on her back naked. She was also fined 5 shillings in court costs. After another episode in his life, Patrick's life had settled down now, and they developed roots. It had been a very long and tough road for him to get to this point in life. Most of his friends, laborers at the mill as well as the surrounding farms, included former Battle of Dunbar prisoners who had been indentured servants themselves. Patrick was amongst friends. In 1663, the local census was 130 people, and over half of them were fellow Scots he had served with. Over time, starting around 1662, when Patrick and his wife Anne had first moved to the Oyster River area, Patrick had become friends with a gentleman named William Phillips and his wife Bridget. They all had become good friends over a short time. Phillips, as he's called by Patrick, had been a wine merchant from Boston before coming to Dover, New Hampshire, just outside the Oyster River settlement area. Phillips was also friends with another man named Valentine Hill. Valentine is making a fortune with a sawmill in Dover. They also became good friends. Phillips, seeing the success of Valentine, and soon wants in on the sawmill action. He hires another acquaintance named Thomas Doddy and Patrick, both Scots, to help him build his mill. According to the records, Phillips has them sign as witnesses to the sale of land that he buys in 1667 above the falls of Oyster River. When he had the deed to the land certified, he had the 2 men witness the deed, Patrick Denmark and Thomas Doddy. A few months later, Phillips had built his 12-blade sawmill above town. After the initial startup, the sawmill came a great need for more lumber. Phillips, who is a gentleman, educated and wealthy, decides that he could go up the Oyster River to maybe bargain for some nearby land with an old acquaintance who happened to be the chief of the local Sochi Indian tribe. Phillips sets off in a canoe paddling upstream, towing another canoe that contained gunpowder, liquor, and copper pots and pans. After greetings and smoking a peace pipe with the chief, they negotiate. According to the records, they made 2 agreements. 1. William agreed to hire English and Scottish timbermen and carpenters to build a fort on the island the Sochis had retreated to. The Abenaki, a warlike tribe, were exploiting them, and they wanted protection. 2. In the negotiation, the chief agrees to trade 4x4 square miles of the Kennebec riverfront for the timber needed for his new sawmill. By now, the Huron and the Abenaki tribes had heard that the Sochi tribe was trading with the local settlers of Oyster River. That didn't settle too well with them. In 1675, 6 years later, it was a chilly September night when the Abenaki Indians attacked with a surprise raid. They killed many of the locals and burned down Phillips' grist mill that Patrick, Valentine, and Phillips had built. William Phillips, having served with the English army, and having just met with the chief, had received word that tension was brewing in the area with other tribes. This gave Phillips time to prepare. He fortified his grist mill, and then in the attack defended it against the attacks. This defense, in which he was severely wounded, later earned him his title of Major and Magistrate, which was confirmed by the Royal Commissioners that year. Giving up on the idea of running a mill again, more than likely due to his injuries from the attack, the records show Major Phillips soon after left the Oyster River area, settling down on a small farm near Boston, near where he had lived before. Major William Phillips then disappears from history. Life was never easy in the mid-1660s. Tensions between colonists in America and the Native Americans began to grow. While Patrick lived at Oyster River, he, his family, and his neighbors were again attacked by Indians in a large and fierce attack. Homes were burnt, neighbors slain. This time, 300 people were killed during the attack. Tensions had arisen to a boiling point. Patrick joins the Maine militia for 3 years from 1675 to 1678. Later, his two sons, Patrick Jr. and James, also joined to fight against the Wampanoag tribe, led by Chief Metacomet, also known as King Philip. The residents of the area were on their own. This was the First Indian War and began on June 20th, 1675, and ended on April 12th, 1678. Before we continue with Patrick's story, I'd like to introduce you to Niall, who will be taking over from here. He's lived the experience, and it's best he speaks to the rest of the story. Niall, welcome to our historical journey. We are honored to have you here today.
Thank you, Cedric. Hello, everyone. I'm honored to continue sharing this incredible story of resilience, spirit, strength, and determination with you of Patrick Denmark. There were 3 Indian wars that finally ended in 1696. By now, Patrick had become a respected member of his community as a leader. Although his later days were filled with toil, he kept moving forward as always, driven by hope and determination, inspiring others to follow his lead. And so, the story of Patrick Denmark, the Scottish soldier turned American pioneer, should remind us that even in the darkest times, hope and bravery can lead us to keep moving forward, to continue to build new worlds and new realities. His journey from the misty Scottish hills to the brave new land is a story of resilience, a story that continues in the hearts of his descendants today. And that, my friend, is the story of Patrick Denmark, a true pioneer of spirit and strength. Please like and subscribe to our channel today.